Hey, what's up guys? How we doing? I'm back and I'm going to do a fun game today where I do publicist versus critic. And the two topics I'm going to take a look at are Chase Sexton, who's had his issues as of late. Well, not as of late, ever since being on the 450. It's crazy what's going on with him. And then also Cameron McAdoo, as they call him, Whackers or Crashadoo. So remember guys, subscribe. I appreciate it. A lot of you guys are subscribing and I thank you all for that. And if you're not subscribing, man, you're getting left behind. Cooksy Mob all the way. But let's get into this thing.
You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy.
All right, guys, so Cameron McAdoo, a lot of you guys have been mad at me for being a little bit critical of him. So I'm going to be critical of him, and I'm also going to defend him in the same piece. I'm going to pretend right now like I'm a critic. As a critic, you're going to talk about negative things. As a publicist, I'm going to walk through why the things he's done aren't so bad. So I'm literally just playing a game today. So here's what I'm saying about McAdoo if I were a 100% critic of his. Okay, ready? All right, so McAdoo is a hazard out there. There's a reason they call him Crashadoo or Whackers. Let's go all the way back to Atlanta. Remember Atlanta when he had that horrific front flip crash and was clearly, without a doubt, concussed? I don't care what the Alpine Star medical crew says. I mean, it's more of an indictment on them than anything that they went over there like a boxing referee when they stand a guy up after a 10 count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, go ahead. You're fine to race. You're fine to go out there and risk other people's lives and your own moments after having just a horrific crash. Yeah, that was stupid. And it's an indictment on the people around him that they would allow him to go out there. I've had a long talk with Nick Way about this, who's his rider coach. Nick made some good points. But I still think somebody needs to sit this poor kid down. He's one of the toughest kids I've ever seen. He needs to be protected from himself so he doesn't hurt anyone else. And you say, no, it's his own decision. Well, tell that to Chris Blose. Chris Blose had to take a helicopter ride because of one of Cameron's mistakes that same weekend. Remember, that's when they were doing the residencies where they did 3 races at one venue. Well, he came back just a couple days after that, made a horrific mistake, took out Chris Blose, ended Chris Blose's season and a helicopter ride with a laundry list of injuries. It was horrific. And tell that to Pierce Brown, who was taken out by him in the whoop-de-doos that same weekend. I believe it might have been the same night that he took out Chris Blose. And Cameron, not being in the right state of mind because he had a concussion, in such a rush to get to his bike. Pierce is literally stuck under his bike. Cameron steps on his torso on the way to pick up his bike. Never mind sportsmanship and helping a guy get unstuck. He stepped on him. Yeah, Pierce was pissed, and he should have been. And I cannot believe there was not a penalty for stepping on another rider to get to your bike. What if Pierce had been really injured and Cameron stepped on him? It's a complete disregard for his competitors, and that's hazardous, guys. That's hazardous. This year, he raced after a concussion. He was knocked out in the whoop-de-doos. Literally, Jet had to pop up over him because he's laid out in between the whoops. I watched him come off the track on the Asterisk medical crew, balance clearly out of whack. He did not look good. There's no chance he should have raced that night. Yet, he did. He got away with it. He didn't hurt himself anymore, and he didn't hurt anyone else, luckily. But that's a bad decision, and it shouldn't have been there. And then the decision where he jumped into Jet in a heat race. What was he doing? There's no room there. There's no reason to make that decision. There's no reason to go for that. We need to sit him down. MotoGP has a system where you make a certain amount of bad decisions, they sit you out for a race. You collect points. Every time you make a bad decision, they jot down 10 points. And when you get to a certain, get to a certain point total, I don't know what that is, but when you get to that point total, you're out. Cameron McAdoo has racking up these points, and if I were running the AMA, if I were the Albrechts or whoever's making the decisions, I think if he makes 1 or 2 more of these bad decisions, I sit him out for a race, like a technical foul or unsportsmanlike conduct in football. Like, you have to do something to keep these guys safe. And I'm not saying, that he's not working his ass off or anything like that, but you make decisions that put other people's lives and careers and earnings in jeopardy. At some point, they need to step in and do something. All right, guys, so that was his critic. And now I'm going to defend him. Now I'm going to pretend like I'm his publicist and go after and just basically help him out. But before we do that, remember guys, go check out EBC Brakes. Steve, James, and the crew over at EBC, they kick ass. They've been part of the Cooksey mob for a long time. They got brake pads, rotors, clutches. They got it for UTVs, ATVs, motorcycles, cars, you name it, get EBC Brakes. So, all right guys, now I'm Cameron's publicist and I'm going to defend what the critic just said. Okay, so these people who are coming after my guy McAdoo, really, they need to maybe take a look at his determination, where he's come from. This is a small kid from Iowa who's had to earn everything. This is not a spoon-fed kid. This kid gets everything he earns. He earns it. Remember, he had to get this ride as a tryout. He has, and he's the last PC guy standing. How can you say he's the most dangerous, yet he's the only one that's not hurt? It's tough that people make these decisions about my guy McAdoo, but it is what it is. I mean, he rides, he puts it out there. He's got a pain tolerance, that of, a Navy SEAL. You can't penalize a guy for being able to ride through pain. That's part of the sport. That's part of what makes champions. And you can't take that from Cameron. All those concussions that you said he rode with, the Alpine Stars medical crew cleared him. That's not his job. The Alpine Star medical crew said, you're fine to go race. And once you give a rider that option, of course, Cameron McAdoo's never going to bow out. He's a badass. He's going to ride. And that's what he does. And that's my guy, Cameron McAdoo. He rides hard. All right, guys. So the critic had a lot more to work with than the publicist. But if I were the publicist, those are the things that I would say. What about you? What do you think? But before we get into the next one, we're going to talk about Chase Sexton. I want to talk about Complete Racing Solutions. Coach Rob uses a scientific method to get you in better shape. He checks your blood. Or he does blood work now. He can get your blood checked. He checks your vitals. He checks everything. Coach doesn't run an athlete into Epstein-Barr. Coach optimizes your training to get the most out of your day. And it's done in such a scientific way. If you want to get the most and become the most durable, strongest athlete that you can, and work around whatever work schedule you have, hit up Coach Rob. Programs start at $30 and go up from there. Just let him know Cooksey sent you. All right, guys, so Chase Sexton. I'm going to start by being his publicist. Slide my notes up here. All right, guys, so Chase Sexton. Chase Sexton's the man. He is so fast. He's got endurance for days. And yes, he's made some mistakes, and some what looked to be sure race wins have been thrown away. But he's so fast and so good, how many people would wish to have the results that he has, just being up there and having the possibility to win these races? Lots of people make mistakes. He just happens to do it because he's in first place, so everybody's magnifying it. It's not that big of a deal. Lots of riders have struggles. He just happens to be the best rider, the fastest rider. So when he makes the mistakes, the camera's on him because he's in the lead or close to the lead or battling for the lead. I'll take that any day of the week over somebody who's riding around in 8th making mistakes. So he's making them in first. He'll figure it out. And let's not forget, this Honda's not a very forgiving bike for him. He's going to KTM next year. That's a more forgiving bike. This will fix him. Chase Sexton era is coming. Just hang tight, people. Okay, so that is what I would say if I was his publicist. And guys, check out Epic Garage. Travis got up the new blue ones. If you're in the Nevada, Arizona, or Southern California area, we can come install these bad boys. We got floors, racks, you name it. We'll get you dialed in. If you're anywhere else in the country, we can figure something out. So check out the website, epicgaragedesigns.com, and we'll get you hooked up. Okay, so now I'm going to be the critic of Chase Sexton. How many races has this guy thrown away? This guy doesn't have the mentality to be a front runner. He just doesn't. He has a raw speed. He's like a quarterback that can throw it like all the way down the field, but whenever the game's on the line, he chokes and throws an interception. He's like the baseball player, Chuck Knobloch. Chuck Knobloch was a Yankees second baseman. He was an amazing hitter, amazing fielder, and if you had to make a throw on the fly, just without thinking, he could nail it. He could fire that thing to third base on a dime. If you hit a routine grounder when he's got time to throw it to first base and he has time to think about it, he throws it to the dugout, to the front row. He couldn't make the basic throw. Rick Ankiel, same thing with him. It's called focal dystonia, or the yips, as people like to call it. It changes the way you react in certain situations. It's almost like you get a weird muscle spasm or something weird. Chase has got that going on. When he's in the lead, he gets some sort of a focal dystonia, where he goes to where he has time to actually process and think, and he makes a mistake. Will it change on a KTM? I don't know. I don't think so. I think this is just who he is. These are not mistakes that are made because he's pushing too hard. This is a 100% mental block. And if he hasn't figured it out by now, I mean, he's thrown away more for sure wins than anybody that I've ever seen. And he's done them in a row. And it's getting worse and worse. It's to the point where his competitors are just like, it's just Chase. Don't worry. He's going to be down in a few laps anyway. I don't know what you do. I don't know how you fix it. If I was around him, I would say, hey, just ride around in third until the last 5 minutes and go for it. I would not take the lead. Literally like NASCAR, when they're in the draft and they kind of hang back, I would tell Chase Sexton, I don't want you to be fast qualifier. I want you to do race lines the entire practice sessions. I do not want to see you on the top of the board. I do not want to see you lead races. I want to see you get as far away from that as possible until he can figure the situation out and rip off a couple wins or a couple podiums or a couple races where people forget and he forgets. He needs to get as far away from this as possible. So anyway, guys, that's it for Publicist versus Critic. Let me know if you like it. If you do, cool, I'll do more. If not, we'll scrap it. But I figured I'd try something a little different today. Thanks, guys. Later.